This is Way Beyond the Twilight Zone. My name is Gabriel. I'm here with Victor, and one more time with the honor that having with us today Emmet Connor. Victor, you can tell the people how they can contribute to this work through the QR code or through here, YouTube. Anyway,
All
just make
right.
your magic.
So just a basic presentation of the channel, right? So guys, for those of you who would like to contribute with our work, here's the QR code on the screen, and you can also do it by the links on the description. But anyways, we would like to presentate Emmet Connor here for you. He's on here for the second time with us. Emmet is an author. He's an Irish author, right? So let's put it the dots in our eyes. So Emmet, it's an honor to have you here once again, brother. And I'm sure we're going to have a great show today, and we have a lot to cover. So thanks for being here once again, brother.
No worries, man. Thank you very much again for letting me be on your show. It's great to speak to you and Gabriel again for sure, 100%.
Thank you, man. So I think Gabriel has something to show you right from the beginning, so we can start from there, right?
Okay. At the beginning, I would like to ask you a question that will guide our conversation today, Emmett. In January 2025, last year, I saw a news about something that 46.7 million people born outside the EU were living in the bloc, representing something like 10.4% of the population. Another 4.2 million people arrived in 2024, while majorities across the Western, we are talking about mass immigration. And lots of people usually say that is poorly managed. And this is a particular thing that are happening in the recent years by the events that we see every day in the news, all these tensions between people that arrived in Europe but can't really approach the culture, to the language, and everything. But my first question is why? Why did Europe choose this path? And who is paying this price, this social price, this economic price, day by day? You live there. You can tell me better than anyone.
Sure. Well, yeah. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for letting me be on the show again to speak to you, and it's an honor. So, with regards to what you're talking about, the global mass immigration problem, we've seen that this is affecting mostly first world nations. It's definitely Europe is experiencing mass immigration, but we know that it's global. When it comes to Europe in particular, the main culprit or the main instigator that most people talk about is the European Union, which didn't start as the European Union. Before that, it was the European Economic Community. Before that, it was the European Coal and Steel Federation. So this thing kind of developed over the decades, and it's probably the main factor to why European countries don't really have borders essentially anymore. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you've got we call it like a common travel area across Europe, and this kind of removal of the borders has been the main kind of problem with all of this. We can see that most of the immigrants are coming in from because in Europe's case, they're coming in from Africa and the Middle East. They're coming in from third world nations and the first world nations. And this hasn't happened overnight. And what makes it different as well is that if you look at, say, for example, the United Kingdom, which has a colonial past, you had plenty of different ethnic groups in the UK going back decades. But what's been happening in much further back in history, but in the last few decades, something different is happening. It's like somebody has hit the accelerator pad and brought in much more immigrants into this kind of zone. So, but of course, this is a global problem. It's not just Europe. But the situation in Europe is pretty much catastrophic, and many countries are kind of beyond the point of no return, some people call it. And now we've got a right-wing pushback. So everyone's talking about closing the borders. I know we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, but clearly the right wing or the nationalistic or patriotic movement in Europe is not in control. And what we do have in control of the governments are people generally swinging to the left or internationalist open borders. And even though the UK managed to get itself out of the European Union with Brexit, hasn't really stopped that much, interestingly. So yeah, lots to talk about.
Definitely, Emmett. And honestly, I think it's more or less like Brazil, where you have the candidates and you have the senators, the governors, and the presidents. But who is really pulling the strings? They are more behind, the scenes, right? So I must imagine that in the European Union, it's not any different because we can have the prime ministers and we can have the presidents, but I think this whole immigration stuff, it was caused by these people behind the scenes, right? And anyways, I, I at least from here, for us foreigners looking at the situation, it looked like you guys are done. It honestly, it looks like truly that you guys are done and that there is no way out of this. But w- I think that the only way is with violence, but at least this is the most vulgar approach and it never ends well, right? We are seeing this since forever. But uh, uh, anyways, let's keep it on the immigration side by now because I want to ask you your opinion about this behind the scenes stuff because for most of people they're just thinking that hey, the Europeans are the good guys. They are letting everyone come in, and get a job and get money. But it's not like that, right? There's definitely some agenda behind all this, right?
Oh yeah, well, say when you look at the Irish government, for example, just to start with Ireland. Ireland has become joined the European project quite a long time ago. 1973 is when Ireland joined the European Economic Community, but there were several kind of treaties after that and votes. I think there was the Maastricht Treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, where there was these various attempts where they organized a vote to kind of, they're pretty much giving away Irish sovereignty from what I can remember. So the establishment, in collusion with the European Union, the Irish establishment was kind of asking, like, it was getting permission. But so there's clearly an agenda to bring in mass immigration. And certainly you have these really powerful people involved. You had when the European, or the Treaty of Rome was in the early 1950s. That was like the precursor to the European, the Steel and Coal Federation, which eventually became the EEC, as far as I know. And you had people like Rothschild involved and Paul Henry Spaak, the Belgian, I think, socialist. But the bottom line is, I always come back to, gentlemen, is that these kinds of people, whether it's a globalist elite type like a George Soros type, or Peter Sutherland in Ireland, he was a major globalist. He was the European ambassador to mass immigration or something like that. These elitist types wouldn't really have any power over Ireland or another country if these countries were healthy. If you had strong patriotism, strong pride, strong culture, and a patriotic government. So I understand the argument of wanting to know who's kind of pulling the strings, but at the same time, we've always had sociopathic control type egotistical personalities who want to rule the world. We've always had them, but this time it's amazing in this age, in the internet age, in the modern age, the ones we have now are kind of getting away with it, and they also have millions of people helping them. I mean, in Ireland, I don't know how many, there are a few 100,000 people in Ireland who either don't really have an opinion, or they are actually okay with mass immigration because they don't want to be called racists, etc. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and a lot of people involved, I think.
That's correct. I saw another data that was by the end of March this year, around 98,000 people lived in UK receiving asylum support, and a few of them, like 21,000, lived in hotels, housed in these hotels. And by the previous months of this year, nearly 39,000 people arrived by small boats in UK. So when immigration increases in this way, it starts creating pressure on housing, school, healthcare, and welfare. So the working class are dealing with this by now and is getting worse day by day, sharing neighborhoods and public services with these people. And we saw last year in Dundee, Scotland, like a 12-year-old girl was charged by possessing an axe and a kitchen knife. And she later testified that she drew the weapons only after a man made like sexual remarks and pushed her. So we are seeing this day by day, and there was another case in Belfast recently of a man that was almost beheaded by a Sudanese man that was a refugee also. So why did the authorities initially portray like this girl as a principal threat and the problem? She's the problem, you are the problem, questioning all of this. And what this reveal about the public trust on police and policing the official narratives? When you see some news about it, and when people like you, like working class man, knowing what you have to do day by day, and when you see something like this, what is the main thing on the minds of the people right now, that they are feeling trapped about this, or no, they are living like normal? What is the main issue on day by day life for you and other people living near you?
Well, I think that the main issue connected to what you're talking about is people are starting to see now the real world consequences of this open borders policy, and the crime wave that comes on the back, that comes with the mass immigration wave. So it's becoming more and more obvious. I mean, Germany and Sweden were the first countries to be hit with this crime wave for mass immigration. For some reason, those two countries kind of got hit with it the most. And Sweden, and in particular Germany, but Sweden had like no-go zones from all this crime. So I think that the thing that people are most concerned about now in Ireland is they're starting to notice the horror of what happens now when you bring people from third world nations into first world nations, where there's no vetting process. They might be coming from any country, they might have criminal records, they might have mental problems, and they're being brought into these first world nations that are, okay, Northern Ireland, for example, had several decades of extreme violence, but that was political, sectarian violence. But things kind of calmed down. But this new wave of violence is different. So people are starting to see now that we are not all the same. Countries are not all the same. And there is a difference between first world nations and third world nations. And the main culprit, or the main cause for all of this, is these open borders policies. And the amazing thing, gentlemen, is that even now, when you literally see somebody being almost beheaded on the streets of Belfast by this sociopath, you're seeing these horrific crimes, and you mentioned one as well. And there was also an incident in, I can't remember the boy's name, in the UK, where he was kind of stabbed by a guy, and then the cops turned up and tried to downplay what he said. You're not really stabbed, or whatever it was. Things are going to continue to get worse, and the UK, in my opinion, is beyond rescue. Save for a miracle. The Ireland is pretty much the same as well. Just a lot of people are in denial about this, but this is what happens. The European experiment has failed. Open borders have failed, and unfortunately, people now are going to be forced to face the consequences on their streets.
And to make a quick comment on the so-called screening of these immigrants, they actually happen, because here in Brazil, for example, Italy has forbidden many Brazilians to go to Italy, to legally immigrate to Italy, at the same time that they are accepting any African, any Arab. So it's mind blowing, because the people here that I know that tried to go to Italy and they got their visas denied, completely denied. You truly can go. They truly can go. All these people, they were whites, right? They were just like us, and it's crazy, because at least the UK side of things, for us here, Emmett, in Brazil, it's crazy because we watch what's happening in the UK and we think that, hey, how can these guys have no guts at all to at least, take a stand, right? But then you see those freaks, right? Because nowadays, if you have any type of courage, right, at least in Europe or at least in UK, you're some kind of freak, and you get arrested, right? Yeah. Your fight, all it takes, 20 minutes of fighting, and then you are 5 years in jail, and you are a terrorist, and it's all a shame, right? I don't. I think this is a tragedy, right? To be honest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, look at in the UK, what they're doing is look at what they're doing now. They've organized the leftists or the leftist globalist camp, shall we say, in British society, obviously control the government and the police force, and the police are now going around arresting people for social media posts, and this has been well documented. So there's obviously a two-tier policing system. If you go against the agenda, it's becoming like 1984, like George Orwell.
Yeah.
If you go against the system or say anything that's critical, you're going to get arrested. But if the chaos is allowed to continue, and the double standards are allowed to continue. So yeah, this is none of this stuff is really shocking. And I think that the point you mentioned about people wanting to fight back, as I've kind of said before, this is what happens when a population gets completely destroyed through indoctrination and division and propaganda. Look at, say, the UK. I think we mentioned this, Victor, in our conversation recently, or pretty sure it was our conversation. We spoke about how, I mean, the British used to have a magnificent empire that stretched all around the globe, and that was interwoven with their patriotism. They're very strong military, strong navy, and all this stuff. Now, whether or not they only did good or evil is besides the point. I'm just saying that they were powerful, did strong patriotism, and look what Marxism has done to British culture, progressively over the decades. And it just erodes the patriotism away and makes people feel guilty about their country. They said that British patriotism is evil, it's imperial, it's oppressive. The British built up all their strength because they went all over the world and murdered all these people, and people feel ashamed to be British. Then you see the patriotism go down, and then the country weakens, and then you've got all this division. And now, some people are intelligent enough and brave enough to fight back, but there's not enough of them. There's not enough. Like, you need people moving in large numbers in the one direction. That's why I think, it's quite complex. I understand the sentiment of wanting to fight back, but with all this confusion and division, it's very difficult. I mean, the leftist movement in the UK is very well entrenched. It's very well entrenched, and it's very, very old. So, and that's, I think, now starting to overpower the patriotic side. And these people are the ones in government who've been, who are sympathetic to open borders and mass immigration and so on. But yeah, there's lots of people involved in this for sure.
Last month, I saw some news about Tommy Robinson. He returned to UK from Russia, and British police detained him nearly 3 hours and seized all his phones. And there are lots of examples. There was another guy called Samuel Melia that was sentenced for 2 years in prison after running an online library of political stickers. And one of them reads, I saw this, in 2050, you will be a minority in your own country. And this is an example, as I see, and you can comment about it, as an anti-terror law being used to monitor and intimidate political dissidents. As you say, some people do something in their social media, they post something. There was a video about it, the two cops in front of the house. Oh, are your teenage kid home? Oh, okay, she is, but I need to know what you have to her. No, she posted something on social media, and we are here for this. So this is to intimidate people. And looking to your work, everything that you talk about in internet and even your book, do you feel a little bit afraid about that?
Oh, you mean about the control coming from? Oh, yeah, where it might lead potentially. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, you as a lead.
yeah, it's like if you have people in charge. So it's interesting that, okay, so I'll go straight for the direct thing here, the jugular. So you look at, say, Keir Starmer is a member of the Fabian Society, right? There's lots of people involved with the British establishment who are traitors essentially, but Keir Starmer is a member of the Fabian Society. All the top Labour guys over the decades have been Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, Jeremy Corbyn. All these characters are crypto communists. They're anti-British people, and they're just walking around in the British establishment being anti-British. So what I'm trying to get at here, gentlemen, is that there's no limit to how bad things can get, because this is just communism repackaged. It's totalitarian control. It's all about state control. And, George Orwell mentioned him, 1984. It's all about the group, the party. It's all about the establishment. And you will get some back and forth, and there's different groups involved. But I mean, this level of totalitarianism shows us what I always look at is what when you see the totalitarianism happening, the control happening, what are they trying to control? So if a group of Muslims come along and say that, well, they start talking about Sharia law or something publicly and they're not arrested, but then someone comes along and starts talking about Christianity and they get arrested by the police, ideologically who the police represent now. They represent the Red Green Alliance, the Communist Islamic Alliance. It's like the actions that the state performs and the cops perform tells you what Britain they want in the future. So I always come back to that. It's happening in Ireland too, slowly but surely. Like, what are they trying to suppress? What kind of speech are they suppressing? If they're arresting people about racism, quote unquote, because people are against mass immigration, that's Marxist sentiment. It's like you cannot criticize anybody if they're not white, because we are the oppressor class as white people. Europeans are the oppressors, not non-whites are the oppressed. So they give themselves away by the things they police, pretty much, I think.
And somehow all of these problems, they are linked to something that I call Marxist contamination, because I think that contamination is a proper word to describe at least what happens when someone starts to get involved with all of these ideologies. And it's basically it goes way beyond of a mindset, right, of an ideology. I think it's a human crisis, right? Because this person, he's seeing reality through a different lens and is completely incorrect. And at least this example of the immigrants, of the crime, it's a shame because you see, at least the police is educated to react against Christians. It's not something, because at least the way I see all these problems, they are framed, even on X, they are framed by the so called conservatives through the lens of, hey, it's merely this agent here that doesn't like Christians. And it's not like that. We all know that it's not like that. They all, in the police academy, they are being educated in a certain way. And it's a shame. You even wrote a book about the red cult, right? So the red pandemic, right? Sorry, about the global Marxist cult that spread everywhere. And these people, at least, I don't know if you will agree with me, Emmett, but I think that these people, you can recognize them by their language. At least it's the easiest way to recognize them is by the language, because they aren't saying, they can say the same words that we are saying, but they don't mean the same that we do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the language gives them away. I totally agree. It's like they for example, the terms, say, white privilege or white privilege, it became very popular in the United States, and we had people on the left wing generally, but people all across society were talking with this term, and that white people white people are like the bourgeoisie, right? So if somebody doesn't know Marxism, they hear the word term white privilege and they don't quite know what that is, and somebody needs to explain it to them. But if you know Marxism, privilege is another way of saying bourgeoisie, and it's a very dangerous racist term that we've even heard in Ireland. And now we actually have black Marxists coming into Ireland. So these are people who are um, 0% Irish genetically, or culturally coming into Ireland talking about this, and that's how you know you kind of they give themselves away. Another instant example is recently um, we had a woman called Jamie Carney who was murdered down in Kerry, County Kerry in Ireland. So it's like the southwest of Ireland, of the island of Ireland. It's a very beautiful area. She's American. I think she's Irish born or Irish background. I'm not sure, but she's American citizen. She was murdered by an immigrant who was I think based in an immigrant center in that area. I'm not really sure, remember the details, but she was murdered by this guy, and the establishment tried to spin this into a feminism issue. And they've done it before. So they won't say this is because of mass immigration. They will say because there's a pandemic of violence of men against women. So they spin the story into a feminist issue. And to back to your question, Victor, about the language, we have the major feminist group in Ireland is called Women's Aid, and you hear them talking about, misogyny, domestic violence, and out comes the language. Now, to a person, or the Marxist language, to a person who's not trained or doesn't have the information, the Marxist, the terms they use, it just goes over their head. They don't understand what they're listening to. These people are activists. And back to what you said, they have a distorted perception of reality. They don't see things like a normal human being would. A normal human being would say, that woman was murdered by an immigrant. We need to do something about this problem. A lot of them seem to be doing that. That's what a normal person would say. But brainwashed people would say, is that really what it is? Is that really the problem? And all this bullshit comes out because they're brainwashed, because they think they are the virtuous people. And, fighting racism is more important than, the lives of that woman or any other of the victims that we've kind of talked about. So, yeah, absolutely. The language that they use, the terms they use, solidarity, equality, diversity, progressivism, all that stuff. It's the same bullshit language that you hear, you know, Zoran Mamdani and his comrades in New York, who are becoming famous now. Trump mentioned them as well, of course. You hear they all talk the same way. It's just fascinating. And that's why when I lived in a few different Western countries, I've lived in Australia, the UK, Malta, the United States, Ireland. When you deal with these lefties, they all use the same language. It's really extraordinary. It's like they come out of a factory programmed the same way to use the same language. And they give away, they tell you what ideology they have by the causes they support and the language that they use.
In Britain, I believe that it was last year, there was a woman called Isabel Spruce that was criminally charged after silently praying near an abortion clinic. Even though the official guidance states that silent prayer alone does not a threshold for criminality, but we know that these things are happening. In Germany, I saw the same thing. A guy praying silently in front of the gates of Brandenburg. Same stuff. He was praying. The cops arrived, and he was imprisoned by doing this. So I'm connecting this with the last question from Victor. What turned this private thought that we can have, or religion, or peaceful prayer in a sidewalk into a criminal offense?
Yeah, I think, well, I've thought about what you're talking about, Gabriel, and I thought, is it because the leftists, the globalist leftist Marxist camp, they're always anti-Christianity, and they see it as an enemy because Christianity has some very strong moral values. It's almost like in a night. I mean this in a complimentary way. It's like a program that runs people in a good way and teaches them the difference between right and wrong, and it's a very good influence. And Marxism always seeks to destroy this because it's like a competing ideology in a way. And I thought maybe it's because of the anti-Christianity thing that's part of it. But we've also seen people do protests near, say, abortion clinics in Ireland and other countries where they brought in this exclusion zone. They spin it. They say that you cannot protest because it will cause distress to the females going in to get an abortion, right? So they're trying it in Ireland too. But what I was getting at is I don't know if it's political or religious. Maybe it's both, because even if there's no religious element and people are protesting against this stuff, they have to stop protest. It's very important for them to stop protest that goes against their agenda. Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School spoke about repressive tolerance, or liberating tolerance is the term he used. I think pretty much he pretty much recommended that they won't let leftists, or they won't let anyone do any protest except the left. So the left can have all the rights they want to protest and do whatever they want, like in Ireland in 2018, and have an abortion referendum victory and all this stuff. But if you go against their agenda, all of a sudden you've no more right to protest. So it's very fake. It's, it's very controlling. But I think that the religious thing that's happened a few times. People being religious, praying in the street. Now you can see it's a bit more obvious now that, gentlemen, that this is really just communism, because we know they're against dissenting speech. We know they're against Christians. So the most logical culprit is, again, what's driving all this is the ideology of communism. No Christianity allowed, particularly not in a political protest, context, if you will.
Yes, sir. And I think that if I can add my 2 cents on this as well, these guys, I think the problem is that they they are extremely successful in this Herbert Marcuse strategy, because what's happening right now, at least in the right wing movement here in Brazil, it's I think it's the best example in the world right now. Is that the communists, they completely hijacked the movement. So even the demands, basically, of the so-called patriots right now, they are even linguistically very similar to the demands of the communists. So I don't know how you face this, Emmett, but I think that it's over. Like we stand no chance against these guys because they are everywhere. And at least this is my honest impression. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's like, I like this. I like this thinking, come over to the dark side. Like I gave up years ago. No, I mean, I realized 2018, because I think it's important to talk about this, because look, we're adults, like we're grown men here, and there's an awful lot of delusion. And I think people, you see, if you look at Ireland, for example, people are still talking about protests. They get hysterical about protests, as if that's going to fix the problem. It's not going to be that easy, nor is it going to be that easy just vote your way out of this. Like I said this to the Americans a few times on big American spaces and podcasts when I was in 2024, when I was promoting the book heavily. I kind of said, this is not going to be easy. This is ideological warfare, right? This is a struggle in the world about which world this is going to be. If you have all these crazy people with no morals, who they think they have morals, but it's just Marxist rhetoric and bullshit and so on. They think they're building utopia, but they're actually dragging us towards hell. And then the rest of us who are not brainwashed are trying to stop them, but they've had a head start. They also control the education system, and they control all the politics. Antonio Gramsci, one of the many Marxists over the last 150 years, who kind of modified, the ideology. They invented their own interpretation of the revolution. Gramsci came up with the phrase of colonize the superstructure, right? So the superstructure was the kind of the parts, the organs of the society or the state, like the family, education system, media, I think law, and there's some other things as well. And he was saying, we'll just fill all those things with people who are want to be Marxist revolutionaries, pretty much. Now, people have talked about the other term, the long march through the institutions, they call it. And often people attribute that quote to Gramsci. He didn't actually say that, but it's the same idea. It's basically fill the system with all these types of people. And the amazing thing, gentlemen, is that um, the communists learned 100 years ago, don't walk around the place telling everybody that you're a communist, because you're making it too easy for people. Be a little bit sneakier about it. Call yourself a democratic socialist or a progressive or whatever it is, or something nice, an activist, an anti-racist activist, whatever it is. And then nobody else is alarmed by them. Nobody sees them as a threat. It's incredible that all the damage this ideology has done, all the dead bodies, all the shit that's happened, people just have forgotten. And I talk about this in the book that despite the resume of Marxism, people just don't seem to see these people as a threat. Like, I mean, even Rupert Lowe, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast recently, talked about the Fabian Society, and Donald Trump was talking about communists as well. It's like, it's amazing how many people don't know about this, even though we're a quarter of a way through the 21st century. So, as I talk about this, people are very good at repackaging themselves and hiding their intentions. I taught use this analogy a lot. Used this analogy a lot. Like, if you're fighting somebody in the street, if you're having a fist fight with somebody in the street, and they don't know what they're doing, they tend to just swing their arms, like an amateur, and
Yeah.
go for your head. They don't know what they're doing. But if you're fighting a professional fighter, they know how to throw a punch in a way that you don't really see it coming. It's not telegraphed. You don't see the strike. The Marxists are very good at that, and they have a lot of experience. And even now in Ireland, the place is literally going to hell, and the political right is riddled with Marxist thinking. People still can't see this. It's really extraordinary. And yeah, don't get me started. It's really, as I've talked about, this is really is the biggest struggle of our age, I think.
Some people are calling. I saw in Sweden. They are making the lives of the people that are trying to reach there a little bit harder. So the European Union has now introduced harder rules on border, like you said, screening and asylum claims, and started to do some deportations. But we know that is not a genuine correction of the problem, right? Of all the migration policies that took place 20, 30 years to now. So this is an attempt to win back the voters without changing the underlying model of this. Bring people, people from all over the world, third countries, as you said, and just showing to people that they are trying to do something. They know that you are facing a problem. And, no, keep voting on me. I'm on your side. Now I'm doing something.
Yeah, that's a classic political maneuver. We've seen governments do that before. I'm glad you raised this point, Gabriel, because people are so gullible and easy to deceive. Even people within the European Parliament and people who help them, and they're under pressure to keep the European Union experiment going. So this could be a political maneuver just to take the pressure off, and then maybe we'll see what happens next. They want to keep their project going. But as you said, Gabriel, I mean, it's kind of too late. It doesn't really matter. These are like token gestures. I mean, a lot of the countries in Europe are gone already. You've already got massive amounts of immigrants in these countries. And in Ireland's case, there is no political right movement. There's going to be no, they said there's going to be deportations. I don't know if they've really happened yet in Ireland or not. But I mean, the fact remains, the Irish government have said before. Leo Varadkar said it himself that the Irish government is kind of all connected in with the European Union system. So these guys are fanatics. Like, I remember watching Guy Verhofstadt was one of the guys in the European Parliament who used to debate with Nigel Farage, and this guy is a fanatic. He's literally screaming about how the European countries refuse to give over their sovereignty to Europe. He was actually irate or really upset about this. These people don't just disappear. These are career politicians. They're on good salaries. They're in the European Union experiment. I find it very hard to believe that they're going to want to give this up. And we've also got, I know this is a kind of connected subject. We've also got the communist entities, I believe, involved somewhere like Russia and the CCP, China. They don't want Europe to stop with the experiment because they want to see the West collapse anyway. So there's lots of groups involved here with vested interests, and I totally agree that this is probably just a political maneuver to take the pressure off the European leadership.
And they can definitely profit from this as well, right? Because they can put in place a lot of technologies that will control people. That, hey, yes, we're going to offer you some safety now. Guess you're going to need to download an app. to prove you are a real citizen. This is the screening that they're about to do. But going to America now, Emmett, we have seen recently that Trump started to talk about communism, and that communism is really a problem, and that we should address it, and that we should educate people on the problems and the crimes of the communists. But truth be told, at least the impression that I get from the critics and from the people that, the normies basically, not the enemies of Trump, but the normies, is that, hey, this happened too long ago. Like, hey, communism, man, this is like a long gone threat, and they couldn't be more wrong, right? But my question truly is, what do you think that made Trump took this decision to start talking about it? Do you think as well that it's just a political maneuver, that he's just trying to, to win some votes, or do you think that's something, there's something deeper behind it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that no, I think he's genuine from what I know. I'm not a Trump worshiper. I don't know the guy personally, just judging him from what I've seen him do or the speeches that he's made. And he has brought up the communism thing a few times, and when he didn't really seem to have any gain for doing so. So I do think he's genuinely aware of this, and he seems to be. I don't know how it works in the States. I know the president has a lot of things on his desk and things to worry about, but anyone in America involved with right-wing nationalistic politics can see that, okay, it did not begin with Mamdani being elected, but there's obviously a problem there. And people are starting to see it's more obvious that now you have, as we saw, Chicago is a political cesspit. Los Angeles, the Western Seaboard, much of that has kind of gone to communism as well. So there's all these parts of the country are falling into communism, and New York has always been, for a long time, has been like a democratic state. But now things are getting really bad, and this kind of backs up
Yeah.
my argument, which you know very well, Victor, in my book and such, is that things get progressively worse. If you don't stop communism, things are going to get worse. Now you see the Islamists working with the communists to getting into office and electing their comrades and so on and so forth, and the encroaching, get more power. So I think that Trump, from what I know, is a good man, and he has to face this. He has to talk about it. I mean, all of the analysts involved with the White House and the American government, they must surely see this as a clear and present danger, because it obviously ties into the CCP China encroachment, particularly in Canada, and what's happening in the Middle East. The common ingredient in all those things is the international communist movement. And they know full well that, I mean, I'm sure they know their own history, that, after World War II, America and the American military was the main opponent to communism across the world. And
Yeah.
they were being attacked from the inside and the outside. There's some conspiracy theories on that subject, but I believe that JFK that was a KGB operation to kill JFK, because he tried to stop the communists in Cuba and elsewhere. So I think that the Americans, Trump, hopefully are more intelligent enough to realize that, this is a nationwide problem. America is under attack from the inside and the outside, and it's also a global problem too. And my only concern here, gentlemen, is have they woken up quickly enough? Are they awake quickly enough? Are they organized enough and in large numbers? I think America's got a population of 340 million, something like that. How many of them are brainwashed? I don't know. I know the Democratic Party has got, you know, what, I don't know, tens and tens and tens and millions of supporters, and they're everywhere. So, it's I would like to hear more what he has to say about this. But American patriots need to not just talk about this, but do something about this. And I think that, unfortunately, Trump and the National Guard are going to have to come into play here at some point as well, and actually roll into areas of the country to physically stop them. And that's where I know I'm going on a rant here, I apologize, but this is where you have things like people's rights come into play, the American Constitution. People say, how could Trump send the National Guard into this city and do things like this to these, like he did him, with Portland after the Black Lives Matter and so on. This is going to happen all across America. You're going to see more and more pockets of communism, and things are going to get really bad, I think.
We saw this in California last year. Also all the protests about the immigrants question. It was even the symbols that they were using were symbols related to Dugin. The same symbol, the
A
occult
call
symbols
symbol.
that they
Yeah.
use. Yeah, yeah. It is related in some way, and we know it, right? Um,
Yeah.
but my question would be something different. It was just my 2 cents about it. The EU is preparing a digital euro. Is something related in some kind to Pix here in Brazil? Pix is our payment system that since 2019 is working. And they are talking about 2027, 2029, a possible launch, and will give to European institutions an unprecedented power to monitor and control how citizens use their money. So, how are you seeing this as another tool to control the population? What do you think about this stuff?
Yeah, isn't it amazing, Gabriel, that even though we just talked about how the European Union is kind of collapsing and we have these fanatics who are trying to make it work, even now you see these attempts to try to consolidate control. And it's fascinating that, they're trying this now. I'm sure they've tried it before, but I think a lot of people are going to reject this. Maybe we'll see. But also you got the digital IDs as well. So we can kind of see them trying to pull these things in. And obviously, money is a great way to control people. You look at the CCP system in China. I don't know much about their currency, but it reminds me of the social credit system and so on. So anything that gives centralized power control in the world today, we should be very, very suspicious, in my opinion. The last thing we want to do is give away any of our sovereignty as a country or as individuals, because it's not really going to help at all. Certainly, when we have this problem of all these Marxist activists involved, this is not going to go anywhere good, in my opinion. And it should be resisted along with digital ID. That's what I think.
And this is a worldwide problem, right? And it all started in China back in 2013. We already had an example in China. I don't remember the city that started all this, but I remember of a video on YouTube of a Chinese guy saying that, hey, we are already living in the social credit score system and things are not looking good because, truth be told, and we can even merge with the immigrant problem, is that basically, um, for the immigrant, for the guy that is an illegal in Europe, for him to be arrested and stay, 3 years in jail because he sexually abused a girl, 3 years in jail for a criminal is nothing, right? But if you spend 5 years in jail because of a Facebook post, your life as Emmet Connor is over. It's completely over. It's done for you. So I think that this whole stuff about money and the digital money is just one more shekel, right? That they are putting in us because um, it's crazy, Emmett. I don't know I don't know where this will end. Truth be told, brother, I don't know where this will end. But as you said, there are Marxists everywhere that trying to shove this down our throats. And actually, this was just a comment about what you were saying back then. And my next question, it's more on Trump, right? Because I don't know how Irish patriots are seeing what Trump is doing right now, or if they even consider Trump still a patriot, right? So I would like to understand how is Trump's influence in Ireland, because at least in Brazil, it's over. There's Bolsonaro and that's it, and the Bolsonaros, they are nobodies right now, right? So
Yeah, Trump is it's an interesting situation because in Ireland there's a lot of problems even on the political right wing. In my opinion, there's very few people that I know of in Ireland who have a good understanding of the global picture, what's happening, who are not indoctrinated or crazy or whatever it is. It's very difficult to find a conversation, to get a few people involved who don't have some sort of attitude problem or show you signs of brainwashing. It's just the way it is, just my opinion after watching this for years. And I think when it comes to Trump, people's impression of Trump in Ireland, I don't really know. It's not on a big scale. It's not something that maybe there's polls been done before, but the problem is, because America has an alliance with Israel, and America's at war in the Middle East, a lot of people, most people, I'm sure, don't like the idea of warfare. That's totally natural. But a lot of people in Ireland are obsessed with the Zionism thing on the political right, the Jewish stuff, Jews rule the world, etc. So they think. So it's very difficult for them to get behind Trump and support him, particularly when America's working with Israel in the Middle East. I think that's one factor. Another factor as well, because of all the Marxist brainwashing in Ireland as well, people see American imperialism as a danger to world peace. And if Trump is going around engaging in warfare, even if he's engaging in warfare against communists, it doesn't really matter. People will think that it encourages people to look at him as being a kind of imperialist and so on and so forth. I mean, it's very difficult. I would like to talk about that subject more to Irish people, but there's a few factors here holding people back, I think, from giving him the respect he deserves. A lot of Americans are not going to have that problem, and they're going to support Trump. But I think in Ireland's case, I think even the political left, obviously, they don't like him at all. They would see him as a fascist, of course. But if you look at, interestingly, for many reasons, including because of the Israel thing, but and even on the political right in Ireland, you're going to get a lot of people who are not really a fan of Trump and what America is doing. So, it's a difficult one. Yeah.
I see, brother.
Yeah. I talking about this, all the situation in Europe, European Union, once again, is the advancing of rules that they are saying that is a chat control. So this will allow platforms to scan certain private communication, and they use this excuse, like they were using in Brazil and all worldwide, as trying to protect the kids, so it's the same excuse every time. So it's a legal foundation for mass surveillance, of all the private conversations. You are a political adversary, and now they have everything over you. They have a backdoor in all your communication. So start to talk about in letters, to other people. Or I don't know how we can talk to each other in a safe way. That this is very Orwellian. We are talking about money. We are talking about mass surveillance through cameras everywhere, and now the chat control, everything that you type on a social media. I don't know where this is going to take us, to be true. And it seems to be worldwide. Here in Brazil is the same discussion. This week, we had an example here that a very important woman told that she's related to the government, and she said that people criticizing her for spending too much was actually misogyny. They are criminals. So I believe that you have a few examples just like that, but I don't see any hope for this. In a short term, we can't win this battle.
Yeah, I think, well, definitely, definitely. If they start checking people's private conversations and stuff, I am totally fucked. I'm definitely going to hell. I'm going
Yeah.
to the electric chair. I'm finished. I've had a crazy year. There's been a lot of crazy stuff said. I'm definitely going to be in the electric chair. But like what you talked or sent to the gulag. But what you talked about, Gabriel, it's like exactly what you said. You said it perfectly. That what they do is they have to get you emotionally invested to make you go along with it. So if they want to convince you that climate change is a problem, they have to activate your emotions and so on, or whatever it is, feminism, any kind of initiative, they need to get you emotionally invested. So as you said there, they will say that, oh, we need to start invading people's privacy for some benevolent reason. It's because of, child trafficking or pedophilia or whatever it is to get you emotionally invested. It's just a wolf in sheep's clothing, pretty much. And unfortunately, some people are stupid enough to go along with that. If something has a nice package and it seems to be benevolent, people will say, yeah, okay, this is justifiable somehow, and they go along with it. And I've often wondered about people like that. Maybe it's a mixture of being naive and gullible, but also these are people who they can't comprehend control on a big scale. They think that's all conspiracy theory. You know what I mean? Like they kind of emotionally understand that stuff is possible. There are people in the world with strong agendas like this. I mean, Tony Blair, another member of the Fabian Society, former British Prime Minister, he was the one pushing the COVID passports and pushing digital IDs, and he'll be pushing this as well. And it's always people like that. They're just a little bit sociopathic. And when a normal person looks at somebody like that, they have no comprehension of New World Order, world government, or communism. They just see a talking head. And if that person can justify the invasions of privacy, maybe they'll go along with it. But this is like creeping totalitarianism. It is. I bring up the Fabians a lot because it's like the Fabian way. It's not a quick revolution. It's gradually eroding away your freedom and your country and your rights and so on, until you wake up in the gulag, pretty much, and you're living in the social credit system in China, where you either you go along with the system or you're off to the prison camp. So yeah, I don't think this is going anywhere good, unfortunately.
Even here in Brazil, Bolsonaro had inaugurated the so-called Gov.br app. So every citizen, basically, if you want to use any government services, you have to have downloaded this app in your phone. And Bolsonaro took this idea from the Chinese, and he was sold like a great, oh, this guy, he's a great patriot and he cares for liberty and freedom. And it was all bullshit, because basically what we are all, well, we are all witnessing this all over the world, is that the so-called right, at least we can use Trump as an example now. Look what he's doing with Palantir. Look what he's doing with those flock cameras, right? So yeah, we can accept, we can be naive and accept the first and the main argument that it's for our safety. But let's be honest, can you imagine what the Democrat or what the real detector will do, right, with these cameras? And all along this, right, Emmett, we have all these friends of the king that they are profiting from all this. They are really profiting because what kind of information must flock cameras sell, to insurance companies, banks, you
Mhm.
see? And I don't know if you agree with me, but I think that this is some sort of twisted socialism that we are all inserted, because these guys, they are making deals with the state, right? Because their friends are now owning the state, and they basically they get all the jobs, they get all the licenses, and they get richer and richer, and we get even more, we get more controlled and more oppressed. And anyways, I don't know if you share the same vision, or if you just think that this is capitalism, crude capitalism, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, well, I think that as we talked about, if you put people with you know people being in power and controlling things, I don't really think, sorry, let me say that again, people in power or in government is not a bad thing. It depends on what their intentions are, but if they have nefarious reasons for being in there and they don't have a conscience, then we are in trouble. And that's why I think if you look at um the centralization of power in government, and so on, if you have the wrong people in charge, that's where the problem is really coming from. Because obviously, this is 2026, the technology is, we have technology for everything we need now, And it is important to have a government, I think, and a police force and security and cameras for certain things, but it depends on why they're being used. Like what is the ideology driving the technology or the government? That's the thing I focus on. So you look at the United Kingdom, as we talked about, as Gabriel mentioned, Sam Melia, social media posts, and so on. That's clearly, using the police force. I mean, I saw a clip the other day of, 4 or 5 police officers standing around the guy, at Speaker's Corner, in near High London, where people talk in public, and he said something they didn't like or whatever, and they were just surrounding him. I mean, those are like 4 police officers that could be somewhere else. It's using the resources and the technology for the wrong thing. And as we talked about in CCP, China is, you look at that government, I mean, they're a bunch of communist fanatics ruling over a population of like whatever 1.4 billion people. They've got serious problems with poverty. Their infrastructure is collapsing. They're not as rich as they people think they are. And they're projecting strength and wealth to the world and building up the military. That's typical communism. They're more concerned with global domination and looking powerful than actually looking out after their own people. And I know there's a lot of brainwashed people in China, of course. I don't know how many, but there's an awful lot of people who don't really care about that stuff, who are suffering. So, think of the power that government has in terms of wealth, resources, military power, everything. And what are they using it for? They're using it to push their stupid ideology and try to push for global domination rather than looking after their own people. So I think it's really a question of what the beliefs are of the people involved and what their reason for power is, or whatever. If we, the argument, of course, is if we could put more people with right-wing beliefs or patriotic nationalistic beliefs, we could get those in the driving seat, things would be different. That's the hope, anyway.
And somehow, brother, all this madness, at least this is my honest opinion. I think that this is somehow still leveraged by the, I don't know, world evil lords, let's put it like that, to leverage their plans and agenda. Because you see, all these cameras, they were basically a reaction, right? They weren't just a solution that was proposed from, all of a sudden was proposed, hey, let's put all these cameras here. But it was all the conditions that led us to decide to put the cameras, right? And for see, if we can sum up this whole conversation that we're having, I think the most important point is for people to at least try to understand the language contamination, because without this it's impossible for us to try to solve anything, even the solutions. When we start to articulate that, hey, yes, we do have smart cameras right now, and they are actually solving the problem in some communities, they really are, but what is the price to all of this? And people are completely ignorant to this, to what the price is, and they are completely ignorant to, even they can't describe what the solution is really bringing, right? But anyways, this is my commentary.
Yeah, I mean, and how can you fix that? Because how can you fix people's perceptions? Because I don't think we are all equal. I mean, some of
Yeah,
us are really aware of what's happening and we know there's global control, but not everybody's equal. Even in, say, to use Ireland example, like, oh my God, what a depressing cesspit the political right is, like, so badly organized and disjointed and so on. And within that movement, if you can call it that, there's an awful lot of people of different levels of intelligence, different ideologies, and so on. And their awareness on some things is not good. So how can you convince people, average everyday people, sometimes about what's happening? I mean, as you said there, if people are not personally affected in a negative way about things, they don't care sometimes. So if you have, say, in Dublin, for example, Ireland's capital, you have some areas which are lower income areas or working class areas, we call them. you know they kind of tend to notice the mass immigration thing a little bit more. Or in rural areas in Ireland, the richer areas don't tend to notice. The more middle class areas don't tend to get hit with the effects of mass immigration, so therefore they may not care as much. They may not
sure.
want
Yeah.
to call themselves right wing or nationalists. So how can that be fixed? I mean, you think we're now quarter of a way through the 21st century. Some people, you two have been doing great work. I've been doing work for years as well. I've known since, say, the 1990s that there was a global agenda of control. And this is my life. This is all I really am concerned about. But not everybody is like us. Some people just want to get on with life. They just want to make money or enjoy themselves or whatever. How can you make them care unless they feel the effects themselves? And unfortunately, with this globalist agenda, the open borders, one world government agenda, trans, mix all the races together, etc. Sometimes you don't notice it's on top of you, till it's on your doorstep, and then it's too late. And that's what's happening in Ireland now. People have woken up to this, but I think very, very slowly, perhaps too slow. And I just don't know yet what's going to happen next. But anyway, that's my rant about it. I don't know what how can we make people care, or how can we make people more aware, even though it's not affecting them personally?
Yeah.
That's correct. We talked about Bolsonaro and Trump, and my questions related to this kind of figures and political talking. You can picture whatever figure you want on this, but I want to know your honest opinion about all these opportunists talking over the patriotic movements all over the world, even in Ireland or in other places, if you can see it better in other countries. Just your opinion about this.
Well, yeah, I've said some controversial things about this recently, even to Irish patriots. And now, to be honest, I troll people a lot and just make lots of jokes because it's difficult to get a serious conversation out of people, even in a small group. But here's an idea I think both of you will like, right? So, the way in life, if you want to be a good, you want to be a car mechanic or whatever, right? You have to learn how a car engine works. Maybe you go to a course, you get some practice, you're an
Yeah.
apprentice. You build up your knowledge through, being invested in that thing. And that's a relatively simple thing to understand. And I've been all over the place as a person. I've had lots of different interests, and I went through that process so many times. At one point, I didn't have a clue about podcasts or what to do. I thought I needed a university course. I did half of a course, and then I started to teach myself on YouTube videos, and then I learned lots more than in the course, right? So these are all everyday simple things. But when it comes to understanding the globalist agenda, right? The plan for the earth, or the globalist agenda, open borders, that's a lot more complex. I think there's a lot of information, there's propaganda to deal with, there's your own background and culture you have to deal with, your own personal biases. You have to fill gaps in your knowledge. You have to deal with the emotional challenges. You have to deal with losing friends and all this shit. It's so much more challenging psychologically and personally and so on. So here's my point, right? If it's true that, if you want to succeed in business, or you want to be a stand-up comedian or a car mechanic, whatever it is, you have to do things properly and learn to be successful. Why would it be any different with being an analyst of globalism? Why would it be any different? And here's my point, finally, is when you look at the right-wing movement across the world, there's an awful lot of people doing this. They're giving their analysis of what's happening, but they might just be repeating opinions they've heard other people say and so on. There's a lot of that in Ireland. People, it's really strange. They are correct to oppose globalism, and they are correct to be nationalists or patriots, whatever they call themselves. But there's also a lot of idiocy. Like, some of them are stupid or might have no conscience. It's really strange. It's like it's become fashionable now to be a rebel fighting this globalist agenda, but it doesn't mean the person is a good person, or they've got a lot of knowledge, or any sort of talent with this stuff. I don't know if my point is clear. It's really more of a thought. But it's like there's a lot of people involved in right-wing discourse across the world who are not very good at this. And this is where I've talked about this, and very, very well in the book, Victor, that, or anyone else who's read the book, that I talked about how people can call themselves nationalists or patriots or right wing, but also have Marxist thinking in their brains. or other problematic ideas, like, they're obsessed with Zionism, and if you don't agree with them, you're not a real rebel. It's a real mess, and I've been dealing with this a lot, to the point where in Ireland's case I'm almost giving up. Like, I just talk to a few intelligent people who I think are level-headed, but the rest of them, a lot of them, are just crazy. There's just too many conflicting ideas, and then lack of knowledge, like I said. And look at their behavior, tells you, in my opinion, tells you that they don't quite understand what we are dealing with. They think they can just vote their way out of this. No. Or they're just talking about protests. I'm like, no, there's a real lack of understanding here. And anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I hope some of that makes sense.
They are contaminated, right? They are contaminated. You had a personal experience with one of these people, right? And this personal experience of yours had at least demanded everything from you emotionally from some time. And when you faced this person with the situation, her she default to, right, all the feminist garbage. So how can it be? How can it be someone that sells herself as a patriot, as someone that cares for Ireland and it's a conservative, right? All this bullshit. And
Mhm.
when she's faced with a deep emotional trouble of a friend, right? Let's put it like that, she defaults to feminism. She defaults to being a victim and showing that her language is completely contaminated. So you see, at
Mm.
least I think, Emmett, that the tragedy of the political battle, right, of democracy is this: is that the leftists usually they just read one book, and the right wingers they haven't read any books, and they want to debate it, they want to discuss it. It's just a mess, right? It's a complete
Yeah.
mess, brother.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's really like that personal experience you mentioned has been the latest in an awakening process that I've had over the last 5 years. Because at one stage, and this is going to sound funny, I mean, I've changed a lot in the last 7 6 7 years. I mean, I criticize people now for having beliefs I had 5 or 6 years ago. So I've evolved and a lot, I think. And my point is that there's a lot of people on the political right who are hypocrites. They say they are against degeneracy, they're against control. But the funny thing is, and this, you might find this funny, they are actually walking advertisements to why it doesn't matter if their people disappear or their country disappears. I mean, if you're going to be a shit human being, whether it's man or
Yeah.
woman, whatever it is, if they call themselves nationalist, patriot, whatever they call themselves, if they're going to be a shit human being, it's really funny. They are arguing we need to save our countries and stop our people being destroyed. But yet they're a horrible person. You kind of go, well, if everybody was like you, who cares if Ireland disappears? We've a lot of people involved with the Irish right who are like that, who are hypocrites. And not only are they hypocritical, but they will actually attack people like myself who are actually trying to do something constructive. But they, for whatever reason, because of their indoctrination, like, obviously I've pissed off several groups in Ireland. I've pissed off the communists. I've pissed off the Nazi camp as well. And I pissed off people who talk about the Jews all the time. Nobody likes being criticized. They want to save the world, but they don't want to question their own opinions. But this stuff, I think, is really, really problematic. And it's not just in Ireland, it's in lots of countries. I'm sure you got it in Brazil as well. I mean, and this is really important because the political right can't get itself organized because of these infighting and difference of opinions and these degeneracy. I mean, they will never succeed anyway. But the political left are very good at destroying nationalist movements. With conspiracy, subversion, entryism, and so on. So in Ireland's case, the leftists and the state and so on, they don't need to use their tactics to destroy the political right in Ireland because they do it to themselves. You know,
They can use gossip, right? They can gossip
yeah,
and destroy the whole thing, right?
yeah, yeah.
We were involved in a political movement in Brazil, and we have witnessed that. Hey, it doesn't matter. And Emmett, I'm really sorry to be a pain in the ass, but we'll have to go to the last question here because Gabriel has told me privately that his wife was involved right now in a fight. She stabbed three immigrants, right? So you you have to solve, to deal with his girl and the police right now. But so we can head to the end of this short interview, bro.
That's a good
Um,
reason. It's the best reason I've ever
that's
heard.
a good reason, sir. It really is. It's an
It's a noble
emergency, but
cause, you know.
it's a noble cause to defend your wife against the immigrants. But um, I would like to continue on this language contamination problem. And as we see, I think that I don't have any hopes regarding Trump administration. I think that his stance on communism, it's it's late, and I think that he wants some other type of result. At least it's my opinion as a Brazilian that hey, this guy is doing this for the election, for at least the immediate political power, that which means nothing. But um, the thing is, before Trump got in power this last time, when we were talking about Jeffrey Epstein, for example, we were able to list a lot of names. So basically, in this discussion, we were always going to listen about the Clintons, about the Podestas, about the Obamas, about whatever, about the Arabs, about a lot of agents. But now, after Trump released the files, we have pulverized, the agents, and now it's merely Jeffrey Epstein and the Jews, right? So I think we're going backwards. We're walking backwards. But what's your take on this, bro?
Oh yeah, well, first of all, to take the Trump fighting communism thing, whether he's genuine or not, as I've said before, and you definitely know my opinion on this, my position on this, Victor, is that this needs to be a society. We can't look for a savior to fix this problem for us. Like no political leader, Trump or anyone else, is going to come along and do this for us. So there needs to be like, no, I mentioned this before. I think that you need, American society, as many people as possible need to get this thing out of the culture as much as possible. We can't rely on a president to do that. And as well as I think the struggle against communism in America is probably the most important struggle on the planet, because if the Americans don't get on top of the problem here, there's going to be nothing to stop the communist countries from being more aggressive militarily, because there's always a more extreme wave of communism coming down the road. So look at what happened with Canada. Canada had liberals controlling the country for years, and they've pushed the country down a certain road, and now the CCP is coming in to buy more land and control more resources. So things are always going to get worse. But so with the Epstein thing, yeah, it's like I'm sure you've noticed, say, with the Discord, general discussion about the Iran conflict. Wait till you hear this. I've literally actually heard some analysts in Ireland call America and Israel the Epstein alliance, right? So that is really okay, typical. So that kind of ties into what me and Jeff Nyquist talked about, that we believe that the Epstein thing, there was definitely there might have been an operation involved. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't go on, that there's elites into some weird stuff, but I'm just talking it's a perfect way to put like a communist operation to push this idea that Western elites are evil. They're the biggest evil in the world, big distraction. Look over there, and over here you've got the communists taking the Middle East, and now people are calling America and Israel the Epstein alliance. So okay, so America's stopping communism in the Middle East. They're really just pedophiles. How convenient. It really stinks of a whole of a communist psyop, pretty much. But anyway, I don't know an awful lot about this, but it's the way things are interpreted. There's like a certain spin put on them, and the Epstein and the whole Jewish thing is emphasized, but everything else is ignored, including the fact that Putin was mentioned a lot in the Epstein files, from what I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Even these agents that I mentioned, the Clintons, the Podestas, they are all highly connected to Russia, right? So you had people in the United States that were highly connected with Russia, Democrats that were highly connected with Russia, and they were all being mentioned by in the Epstein case. And now all of a sudden, oh no, it's just the Jews, it's Epstein and the Jews and Trump, right? So it's that they were very successful in pulverizing all the efforts because the whole subject just died, right, all of a sudden. And it's a shame because it only reveals, at least I don't know if you are going to agree with this, but it only reveals that the most people of the right, they're just so naive and they are completely controlled and guided. Their language is guided by the communists, right? So they have nothing to fear, right? These guys have nothing to fear. And Emmett, uh, let's go to wrap up all this, bro. I would like to hear you. If we if we made you the perfect question, what would that question be, and what would your answer for that question be as well? Okay, let's put it like that.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. That's you trick me. That's good. You tricked me.
Yeah,
That's a
some
good one.
Tony Robbins stuff, you know. I heard that from Candace Owens, like the way she prepares for her interviews.
Yeah. What would you like me to ask you? Go. And then you have an
Yeah,
hour.
right. Yeah.
I don't
Exactly.
know. Let me have a coffee first. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that like, yeah, how can we get on top of the indoctrination problem? Because I feel like, as again, Victor, you know well, because you have the book and so on. I think this is a problem of indoctrination, the ideology. How can we sort this problem out? And I think logically it can't be stopped because, like I said, this is the problem. This is the thing causing the problem underneath it all, is people brainwashed to be traitors, in our country. So in Ireland, we have people brainwashed to go along with this internationalist agenda. It's the same in Canada, same in Brazil, same as everywhere else. How do we defeat this? And I think the answer to it is knowledge. Like spreading the knowledge, giving people the information. And once they start learning this, they will realize that this really is the thing causing all the trouble. But I mean, how can people stop this if they don't have the understanding? And while we've talked about it before, how the political left, they control the education system. Their plan is to generate new generations of kids who are going to help the revolution, and people like us are going to be simply replaced by newer generations of these little activists and stuff. So yeah, I think that's what it's really all about, is the indoctrination. People have to learn more and more about this. If we want things to stop, we have to change the culture back. The Marxists have gradually changed the culture over decades and decades. We have to change it back, and we don't really have any time to waste now, I don't think.
I totally
That's
agree.
correct. No, I agree. And thank you for being with us again, Emmett. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us. And all the people that are from our channel are invited to just subscribe to Emmett's channel. It's Resolvinar. He's a collaborator in this video, so subscribe to his channel too. He does lots of good stuff. It's beside the books, all the videos that you do, the interviews that you do too. And you are welcome to be here again if you want in the future.
Please, for a
It,
third time.
yeah,
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 we
yeah,
have to
yeah.
do it.
Emmett's in the
Yeah.
house. It's your channel too.
Brilliant. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the platform again. It's always great talking to you guys. So you'll definitely be back on again whenever suits. Absolutely.
Thank you, Emmett. And guys, if you want to check Emmett's work, all the links will be in the description, in the comments. And also, as Gabriel has said, he's a collaborator here in this video. So check his channel out and subscribe and help this nigga out because he's from Irish and he just needs some love from Brazil. Okay. So thanks, Emmett, for being here. And we will surely have a third conversation because, anyways, great things are coming. And 2027, it's just right next here, right? So it's just tomorrow will be 2027 basically, right? And it's only going to get worse and more technocracy and dictatorship and tyrant. So anyways, I don't know even what I'm talking about. So hey, thanks guys, thank you, Emmett. See you soon. Okay, see you
Thank
next
you.
week. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.